I think he's back now.
Apologies to everyone. I'm sorry I had a collapse in the internet connection. Are you still there?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I don't know exactly what moment I disconnected. I found myself, I kept talking for a few minutes before realizing that I was truly alone. And I feel that there is still uncertainty because I keep receiving signals that my internet connection is unstable. So can you tell me where were we when I disappeared? Anna?
Yes, you were comparing the how can I explain why some people answer yes in the FIES and no in the other one, or comparing the two in a table.
And I was, yeah, I wanted to make this point, particularly for Nicholas and for others that might want to use the FIES and the household hunger score in the same survey. So I don't know if, Nick, are you still there? Nicholas? Hello? I don't know. Can I ask everyone, please, to raise your hand if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so it's probably just Nicholas who's not there. So, okay, let me try and repeat, but if problems reappears, then we'll probably need to postpone to resume in a different moment when I will have a better connection. So essentially what I'm trying to demonstrate is that by asking the FIES question and the HHS question in two separate modules, there is no possibility to avoid this problem that we see in this table here. That there is some people who, in principle, should have been saying no to the HHS question because they already said no to the equivalent FIES question. And the same is true for the other two questions, hungry and whole day. Now, again, these are not very big numbers, very large numbers, but still, it's an incoherence between the two data sets. And so somebody has to make a decision and say, okay, should I trust when people responded to the FIES question, or should I trust when people responded to the HHS question? Or maybe the confusion arises because the questions were asked in slightly different manner. In the FIES, we asked, was there a time when your household ran out of food? In the HHS, we asked, was there ever no food to eat of any kind in your house? So it's not exactly the same terminology. I don't know how these have been translated into the local language in South Sudan. Maybe those cases where there is an inconsistency could be traced to some particular enumerators or in some particular region. But the point is that there is an inconsistency here. And therefore, we need, if we want to conduct a proper integrated analysis of the two scales, rather than conducting the analysis separately, we need to solve this incoherence. And there are two ways of resolving this incoherence. One is borrowing the yes answers from the household hunger scale and neglect the three last answers to the FIES. So compiling a new FIES scale that puts together the first 5 columns of the original FIES and the 3 columns of the HHS. And now this will be a data set that contains 5 dichotomic items and 3 polytomic items. And so if we want to use this data set, again, we need to use the partial credit model. Sorry, I need to run this first and then this. So now you will see also that the partial credit model can be run also when not all questions are dichotomic. And so maybe in this way it will be also clearer for FIRAS the difference between the column X1 and the columns X2 and X3 in the results. If we look at the result of this partial credit version, you will see now sorry, that the scale has 8 items, but only the last 3 items have more than 1 threshold. Whereas the dichotomic items have only 1 threshold. Because in all cases, we can always determine the severity level for which the probability of saying yes and the probability of saying no is 50%. But when we have the graded, the polytomic answer, we also have a threshold that switch from yes sometimes, sorry, from yes rarely to yes sometimes, and from yes sometimes to yes often, because these have additional severity levels. Now, again, I want to do a comparison of this new integrated FIES household hunger score scale with the previous 2 results. So I need to do the same standardization, in which, again, I want to make sure that the mean and the standard deviation of the 3 common items are the same, the 3 common items being the last 3. So I do the same standardization that I did before, and I can add on the same chart the raw score that now correspond to these integrated FIES household hunger score scale. And you see that now we have raw scores that go from actually 0, 1 is not showing here, it's probably even to the left, from 0 to 14, and they span a larger range of severity. One other alternative is, instead of maintaining the 3 items as polytomics, we can dichotomize them, so that whenever the answer has been yes, rarely, sometimes, or often, we just set it as 1. In this case, we can run the simple rush model, because now this would be a dichotomic scale, not more polytomic scale. Of course, in this case will be only 8 row scores, but you see that having integrated the answers from the HHS, in which more people have said yes to the 3 severe questions, the entire scale is less severe than the original FIES. Remember that the severity of an item depends on the frequency of responses, and now we are increasing the frequency of yes answers because we are borrowing this yes from the HHS. So we are reducing the number of no answer, and therefore the new scale is measuring a phenomenon that appears to be less severe. Then finally, another way of resolving the incoherence by integrating the FIES and the HHS question is to make a different assumption and to assume that those answers should have been no, simply because they said, the people had already said no to the FIES question. So if I didn't experience at all a condition in the last 12 months, I should not experience it in the last 3 months, because the last 3 months are part of the last 12 months. So this is a result that is not logic. And so alternative is like trusting more the answer to the FIES question. I just define an extended FIES that is equal to the original FIES, but whenever the answer to round out hungry or whole day has been yes, I borrow the frequency response from the HHS. So now I have another scale which has 8 items, 5 of which are dichotomic and the last 3 are polytomic, and I can run the partial credit model. And I call this the extended FIES, because this will be fully consistent with the original FIES, but with the addition of the frequency response from the HHS. And in general, this is my preference. This would be my preferred choice of integrating the 2 scales when the data have been collected separately. Again, we need to standardize the result if we want to compare. And we can verify now that all these different scales are such that the mean and the standard deviation of the last 3 items is indeed the same. And now we are ready to calculate the prevalence of food insecurity using each of the alternatives. There are actually 5 options that I have created. Sorry, I coded only 4 of them. In which now, because I have standardized the severity parameter of the respondent and the standard error, I can define a same threshold and obtain, in principle, comparable prevalence. And the way we do it is as typically by assuming that around each row score there is a normal distribution centered on the standardized severity parameter, and that has a standard deviation equal to the standardized standard error. And then this will create a probability of being beyond the threshold for each respondent. And the prevalence is simply the cumulative, the weighted probability of being beyond the threshold using the relative distribution of cases by row score. So here I'm calling prevalence 1. Sorry. I need to run all the lines, otherwise it won't work. Prevalence 1 is the prevalence that would be generated by the HHS data alone. Prevalence 2 is the prevalence that would be generated by using the FIES data alone. And you see that these are quite similar, 53%, 57%. Then, if I use one of the 2 versions of the combined integrated scale, I have a lower prevalence of 42%. And this is the one where I borrowed the FIES answer and I only took the frequency question from the HHS. And finally, prevalence 4, in which I am actually trusting more the HHS result. And I have a higher prevalence of 53%, which is very similar to the prevalence that I had using the HHS alone. Now, again, and this completes the presentation for today, how to set the threshold. It's an arbitrary decision. It's a convention that we should consider depending on the purpose of the analysis. If this was an analysis intended to compute the SDG indicator for South Sudan, we would probably need to set a threshold at a much lower level, because the moderate or severe food insecurity level for SDG is quite mild compared, for example, to the severity level typically used in the APC acute food insecurity classification, or the severity level that inform the use of the household hunger score in its most traditional applications. But here now, with the combined HHS FIES scale, we can actually set threshold over a very large range of values. And so, for example, in using this integrated FIES HHS in the context of IPC food insecurity classifications, we might even explore different thresholds that might correspond to IPC phase 3, IPC phase 4, and IPC phase 5. And again, I'm so sorry that I cannot devote extended time to these lessons, and I apologize for the problems that I had with internet connection. And I need to stop now, but as usual, I will make the code and the recording available to everyone. So thank you, and please send me comments, question, observation if you have. And Nicholas, if you are back, I will communicate separately with you by discussing the use of this particular data set in a more complete way in the context of the IPC classification in South Sudan. Before leaving, I see Ahmadou, you have your question raised. Sorry, I didn't notice before. Did you want to ask a question or make a comment?
No, it's old hand. I'm sorry. I didn't just, it's fine. But I think before the next session, I will see. Because I try to run the code. And if I have any question, I'll send it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And see you next week.
Thank you.
See you. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.